So good evening, everybody. I think most of us have joined now. Thank you very much for joining tonight's session. This is the Clapham-East of St Neots, part of the section. We issued these invitations just before Christmas, in the middle of the consultation. The consultation is still running until the 24th of January, but we felt it was valuable to bring you together to look at the route and the optionality and have that chance to meet with the team to run through any of the areas where you'll be able to provide feedback. This won't be the last time that we come and talk to you, and certainly there'll be opportunities for you to provide your feedback. This also isn't the sort of official way of submitting your feedback. I should probably be clear about that one. We're certainly going to be discussing lots of items tonight, and we will absolutely take those away, and they will be recorded into a feedback log. But we still encourage you very much to submit your feedback through the paper documents or online, as we've already sort of been sharing. Okay, next slide, please, Charlie. Excellent. So we'll do some introductions. We've got quite a few of us on tonight. I thought it would be quite useful for you to see who the people are behind the names. So we'll do that next. Some general housekeeping. There'll be a bit of a brief update on the project from a member of our development consent team. Introduction to the workshop. I do use the term workshops quite loosely. We won't be breaking you up and doing anything like that. We needed to design a sort of agenda as such that we could get through all of the optionality and the consultation information. So we are calling it a workshop, but it's more of a conversation and a chat, really. There'll be an update on the proposals from Rob and co, and then we'll get into the actual feedback itself. There will be Q&A at the end. Because we do have a lot to get through, and there's quite a lot of us on this call, I will be playing bad cop tonight in the role of chair and trying to move us on quite efficiently. But I do encourage you all to add questions in the chat box as well. We will be looking at that and making sure we cover those questions. Actually, if you go on to the next slide, Charlie, I'd quickly do the housekeeping as well. That one, thank you. As per all of these sessions that we hold online, if you could mute yourselves, which most of you have done already, unmute when asking a question, and use the hands up so that we can just see who's asked the question and when, and we'll get around to you as quickly as we can. I'm recording this session. We will be sharing a link. Sorry, message in the chat. Right, I'll get back to that, Nicola, thank you. We are recording this, and we will share a copy of the recording for you to watch again. But mainly this is for our purposes so that we can ensure that we capture everything today. That's why. If we go back to the introductions, you know me already. I'm the Senior Engagement Manager for the LRGs. I will then introduce Siobhan. If you'd like to come on camera, Siobhan.
Hi, I'm Siobhan Adeleke. I do the stakeholder engagement management for the DCO application.
Rob.
Hi everyone, Rob Milner. I'm the Development Programme Manager for the section of route between Clapham Green and Harsden.
Fiona.
Hello everyone, I'm Fiona Mann. I'm a Senior Environmental Advisor covering this section of route for East West Rail.
And Ben.
Ben Nicholas, East West Rail, leading on the traffic and transport.
I can see there's a message in the chat saying that Brent Fielder can't get into the room. Does anybody know Brent well enough to quickly ping him an email? If not, I'll need to go off camera to do that. Any of the parish councillors, I was thinking. Anybody else share his parish? Yeah, thanks, Gordon. If you have any trouble, just let me know and I'll try and get him in another way. Right, okay, next slide, please. Is there anybody waiting in the waiting room? I don't think so. No. Gordon, if you could just try to let Brent know maybe to dial out and dial in again, we'll see. Yeah, okay. Tell him to leave the meeting and come back in, and we'll try that approach, I think. Right. There's nobody in the waiting room from what I can see.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon. So very quickly on this session, the terms of reference are that we're obviously looking for your feedback and on the design that's been set out in this consultation. So we will not be going over any sort of historical decisions or routes or revisiting those sort of conversations. We want to keep it quite focused on what is available out there at the moment. So we do have lots to get through, as I said earlier, so there's quite a lot to talk about, but just in general, we won't be looking at sort of north versus south or any particular different route options that might have come up in previous discussions. And as I mentioned as well, we will be collating the feedback, but do encourage you to do your own feedback through the appropriate channels. Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm going to hand over to you, Siobhan. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've just got this here to show where we are in the process of this project. We have been consulting and going through a process of design iterations since 2021, and now we are where we are now with the current non-stat consultation, which ends next week Friday, actually. And so the point of this really is to show that we've come a long way, but we still have a bit of a way to go in terms of design iterations. And so it's really important to get your feedback into the designs, and we'll take that away and in the run up to the next consultation, which will be the statutory consultation, we'll be refining the design based on your feedback, and we'll also come back to you and other stakeholders on some of our questions, so we can refine that further. Next slide. And so we're over halfway, almost at the end of our consultation now. We've had 10 events so far, which have been really well attended, and then we've had 2 online events, as well as these sessions we've been having with the parish councils. We've had well over 2,000 responses received as of the beginning of January, and at the events we do have a really broad range of materials available on our website and at events. We've got a little table at the bottom to show the events coming up next. So we've got Bletchley on the 15th, Woburn Sands on the 17th, and then next week Cambridge and Cherry Hinton events. And so we do encourage you to get down to the event if you haven't had a chance to yet, and encourage your constituents to. And it's a real opportunity to have a closer look of the designs and ask questions from the teams. Next slide. Okay, so just an introduction to how these workshops work. So we're doing this really to give you an opportunity to discuss the detail on the proposals, to ask us questions, and for us to really explain what the proposals are like in your area, and for you to really have a discussion with us on feedback and your ideas, suggestions, and particularly areas of concern that you would like us to address. It is an interactive session, so we encourage you to raise your hand and to ask questions as we go along. And we're doing this during the consultation period on purpose, because we've submitted all these designs and we're giving you the opportunity to ask us questions. And as Sarah said at the beginning, it's not a replacement, it's not a substitute for your formal consultation response. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions and for us to listen, and for you to submit your suggest feedback. But please do submit your formal feedback, and encourage our constituents to submit their formal feedback via online or on paper, and those can be paper ones, can either be posted back by free post or handed back to the team at the stakeholder events. Peter, you've got a question.
Yeah, can I just make a point at this stage? I attended I was a guest at the Bedford Town similar meeting last Friday evening, which covered all the way through Bedford, ending up at the Sainsbury's roundabout or Fair Hills. We were running short at the end of the session, and not all the points of interest for the assembled people were covered, particularly access onto and off the floodplain and the subject of traffic management. I see you've got a traffic management person here tonight. That's good. So can we, when we go through the range, can we give some consideration to the Fair? That's the end of the That's the viaduct in its extremity. Please.
Sorry, I think that's the plan, to talk about that end of the route, yes, and we'll do our best. But there's been quite a few consultation events where we have had conversations with people about that area, and you still can add your questions to the contact at, and we can get back to you on that one. But you have to appreciate we've got 2 hours to get through quite a lot, so we'll do our best, Peter.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. And just to reiterate, we are having workshop sessions with local authorities as well, giving them the opportunity to work closely with us and to share their feedback and to understand the design in detail in their area. And so on the 9th of December, we met with the Cambridgeshire local authorities. They had a joint workshop with all of them, which was really successful. And there was a lot of comments raised there, particularly about the interface with the local highway network and integrations with the proposed local developments, the various local developments that are proposed in the area. And there was a lot of keenness on active travel opportunities and the connectivity between towns and stations. And we are meeting with Central Bedfordshire Council also on the 22nd of January, again, to have another detailed workshop specifically on their area. And we will be planning future workshops throughout 2025.
There's a couple of hands up. Is it Mark? Can't see, sorry. Peter, you got your hand up. Is it one from before?
You're on mute. Peter.
You're still on mute, Peter. John, do you want to jump in quick while we're waiting for Peter?
Yeah, it's just obviously Bedford Borough Council, you haven't got a consultation with us on there, which is quite surprising, as you're running through quite a large part of our borough. You're meeting with all the Cambridgeshire authorities, meeting with Central Bedfordshire. Why aren't you meeting with Bedford Borough Council?
We have had a workshop with Bedford that was earlier in December. They came down to our offices in Milton Keynes, and we did have a specific workshop with them there.
Okay, so that was for officers of the council, was it, or for the executive members?
It was targeted at officers with their specific interests across their different disciplines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, move on. Over to you, Rob.
Okay, and thanks very much. So I think we're covering 2 route sections here, so I'll just give a brief overview, and then I think we'll be picking up more specific points on that. So with route section 4 is Clapham Green to Colston. So this section is the new section of railway, 12 kilometres long, twin track railway. And I think the key feature pointed out on the maps is a new passing loop near the Colston area. The construction of this section of route requires quite a lot of cuttings and embankments, also bridges, viaducts to make sure we can keep the railway on an acceptable gradient and to cross over or cross underneath existing roads, public rights of way, streams, etc. You'll notice in the consultation there is some plan and profile sections which show these in detail and show how we tried to maintain we have maintained public rights of way and roads in the area, although localised diversions are required in a number of places. Probably the most significant change in the area since the 2021 consultation, we have shifted the alignment slightly north of Wilden to create a large gap to the village in that area. I think picking up the point earlier, I think in questions we can probably pick up the point on traffic modelling in Fairfield. This slide sort of starts after that point. So can we go to the next section, please, Sarah? Thanks. So the next section we go into is Roxton to east of St Neots. In this section, we are presenting 2 potential alignment options for the Tempsford alignment and in itself the Tempsford station, there is alignment 1B, which deviates just after the Colsden area to go south of the Black Cat roundabout, crossing over the amended existing A421, the A1, River Grey 2s, East Coast Main Line, and back over the A4, the new A421 dual carriageway. This alignment is quite similar to the route update announcement alignment we put forward in 2023. An alternative to this has also been proposed at the consultation. We've been asking for views on both of these alignments. That's alignment 1C, and that runs north of the Black Cat Junction. So we cross over the A1 just north of the junction, River Grey 2s and East Coast Main Line, and then hug the sort of north and west sides of the A421 through the area. The station designs at Tempsford are on a similar basis for both, i.e. the East West Rail platforms are on viaducts above the East Coast Main Line, and then there's a passenger interchange allowing people to access 2 platforms on the slow lines of the East Coast Main Line at the Tempsford station. In the areas where we're also looking at bringing forward one of 2 rail logistics hub options, B and F, the ones that made it through our assessment factor process. B is the blue hashed one, which is east of the East Coast Main Line and east of the sort of Little Barford area. The pink hatch one is northwest of the Tempsford station area and west of the East Coast Main Line. Both alignments work with alignment 1C, but only option B would work with alignment 1B. The purpose of the rail logistics hub is a temporary construction site to allow engineering trains to come on from the East Coast Main Line and lay the actual East West Rail tracks down on the network and help us build the actual railway and rail systems themselves. So they'd construct the tracks from this point east towards Cambridge and west to Bedford. We'll only be taking one of these options forward, and that's partially dependent on which alignment is chosen as preferred alignment, as well as some further work that's underway. So we have expressed no preference between alignments 1B and 1C, and there's a question in the consultation document asking for people's views on those 2. Once we get just north of the existing A421, the routes are then effectively they're the same routes as they head north along the eastern side of St Neots, and then we cross underneath Cambridge Road east of St Neots Winchton Development before moving into the next section. Much of this section east of St Neots is in cut-ins as the hillside rises quite rapidly, though we are in short embankment and bridge sections to cross over Hen and Foxbrook in that area. I think probably the other point to note is alignment 1B is much higher than 1C, so alignment 1B at Tempsford Station itself is 22 metres above ground level, and 1C is 9 metres above ground level at that point, though it does need to be slightly higher to the west from there. I think that covers the area, Sarah. So,
Yeah,
I assume passing to Fiona.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep, thanks, Rob. Yeah, so I've got 2 slides on our approach to the environment on East West Rail, and then I'll talk a bit about our key environmental constraints and mitigation. So protecting the environment is an important part of our decision making when we're developing our proposals. As part of the environmental mitigation hierarchy, we would take a proactive approach to avoid, reduce or compensate for potential negative environmental impacts as a result of our scheme. Since 2021 non-statutory consultation, we have published our environmental sustainability strategy, which is available on our East West Rail website. This contains 6 environmental sustainability pillars. Each pillar has underneath it an associated ambition and definition. So these 6 pillars consist of natural environment, carbon, climate resilience, historic environment and landscape, circular economy, which is about minimizing waste and promoting material reuse, and finally, people and community. Next slide, please, Charlie. Thank you. So as part of this non-statutory consultation, the likely environmental impacts of our proposals and the mitigations are described within our environmental update report. This environmental update report is available as a PDF report and also a digital interactive version on our website. For this section between Clapham to East and St Neots, you can find the information in chapters 8 and chapters 9. As Siobhan mentioned earlier, our environmental mitigation proposals are in the plans and profile drawings, which are available on our website, and we also have some environmental fact sheets on there too. What else has happened recently is that we have submitted our environmental scoping report to the Planning Inspectorate, or PINS for short. This sets out our methodology and scope of the environmental impact assessment process used to produce the environmental statement. The scoping report consultation is being managed by PINS, so it's a separate consultation to this non-statutory consultation, but they will reach out to all the relevant prescribed consultees to request their feedback, and that will form a consolidated scoping opinion, which will be provided back to us. For non-statutory consultation, we will produce a preliminary environmental information report, which will include a bit more detail on our environmental mitigations and impacts. Then, as part of the development consent order application, we will produce an environmental statement, which will include all the detailed information about the baseline, surveys, impact assessment and mitigations. So throughout this process, the design, development and environment impact assessment will continue. We'll make use of information gathered from surveys, technical assessments, modelling work, and we'll also consider feedback from the consultations and landowner meetings which are happening at the moment. In terms of key environmental constraints and mitigation, it's quite a large area here between Clapham to East and St Neots, so I'll give it a brief overview. This includes landscape and visual impacts as a result of new railway infrastructure and earthworks. It may affect nearby settlements, including Clapham Green, Ravensden, Reildon, Colston, Chawston, Roxton, Tempsford, Little Barford and Amesbury. There's potential for loss of agricultural land holdings, property acquisitions and demolitions. There's an area of flood risk near Tempsford. We're crossing several main rivers and ordinary watercourses as well as a result of our alignment. Some of those watercourses also require an assessment under the Water Framework Directive. The River Great Ouse classifies as a county wildlife site where we intersect it, and it's recognised as providing commuting routes for otters and bats. Other impacts include affecting the historic setting of listed buildings and changes to the historical character of the landscape, as well as noise and vibration impacts from passing trains and air quality impacts from changes to road traffic as a result of movements near the new Tempsford station. Key mitigation, as I mentioned in the first slide, we do follow the mitigation hierarchy. We look to avoid, minimise and compensate for impacts. We would look to provide embedded mitigation in the design, such as lowering the vertical alignment in the landscape where possible. This involves lowering heights of embankments, bridges and viaducts. This helps reduce some of the visual, noise and landscape impacts. We're also looking to provide habitat creation areas either side of the roadway to replace the loss of habitat due to the alignment, and also enhance connectivity to existing habitats such as woodlands, and which also serves as a purpose to create visual screening in the longer term as well. So that was a quick summary.
Thanks, Fiona. Does anybody have any questions on any of that before we move on? Okay. Oh, sorry, Justin.
Justin.
You're on mute, Justin.
Just a quick one on the environmental impact assessment. No need to answer it now, but if you could answer it in the notes from this meeting. Could you just set out the headings of the 6 areas that you look at? And can you also set out the hierarchy that those areas are given in your assessment?
The topic areas, do you mean?
Yeah, the 6 topic areas. Can you just outline them in the minutes from this meeting, and then what hierarchy they're given in terms of importance?
I can. So our scoping report is available publicly on the Planning Inspectorate's website. So that will set out what the topics we will cover within our environmental statement. So I can send that across to you. In terms of the hierarchy, I would need to get back to you on that one, but we'd have to. It would be a fine balance because obviously it's people, biodiversity. You have to balance those impacts.
I understand that. That's why I asked the question, and I didn't
Yep.
expect an answer to it tonight. But if we can have an answer in the minutes from the meeting, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank
I've
you.
just dropped the link in the chat to the the Planning Inspectorate website that has all the information and the scoping report details on there as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Siobhan.
Great, thank you. Eric.
Hi there. Yeah, you just said in this short presentation that at the statutory consultation stage there'd be a preliminary environmental impact assessment, or whatever you call it, but the full environmental statement won't be available until you submit the documents.
That's right.
Why is that? Because surely when you get to statutory consultation, we want to see all the information and not only part of it, and not only a preliminary amount.
So that's because we're still engaging, we're updating our designs. We need to consider all the feedback from the previous consultation and also statutory consultation. The environmental statement is our assessment based on the finalised design. So statutory consultation, we get all the feedback from yourselves and from members of the public, and that might result in some tweaks in the design. So we have to be able to assess that fully as part of the environmental statement. So the preliminary is what we think is going to happen at that very point in time based on the current design.
So can we assume preliminary means probably 90%, 95%? Because preliminary could mean 20%. You know, I mean, hopefully at statutory consultation, we are going to be consulted on what really is proposed to be built, subject to minor tweaks.
Yes, it will be more finalised, but we appreciate that following statutory consultation, there may be further comments that result in changes to design. So yes, it will be a more finalised state at that point.
Thanks, Fiona. Right, Rob.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so it's like views where you've come to me. I think we're sort of open the floor up, don't we? So I think we're looking for feedback in this session. Apologies, I haven't done the session before, but my understanding was very much that we give the overview and then I think it's feedback. I don't know on that regard. I don't know if it's worth a quick just closing out the issue that Gordon raised with on traffic management at Fairfield that we said we'd respond. I don't know whether Ben's able to provide a bit of information on that, and then we can kind of move through this session. And as someone's moved on to the screen, these are the sort of topics that I thought we'd probably want to discuss around the design in these areas.
Sure. Well, I will take over from here. So just in terms of, I'll give a bit of a history to where East West Rail are in terms of transport modelling and appraisal that in effect leads on to traffic management. So the way East West Rail have developed our analytical framework is basically developing a series of transport models that help us forecast into the future. So presently we have developed a route-wide 2023 year base year model, which has been based upon observed data on the highway network. You may have seen some of these traffic counts going out in the local area. You may have even driven over them. Those little black tubes in the road where the car turns over, that's us potentially, you've driven over one of ours counting your traffic going down the road throughout the day. And there's also, you may have seen some sort of CCTV at particular junctions that you will be able to count how many cars go left, right and forward. And that's, in effect, allows us to start developing a model that reflects 2023 now. And the reason why we need to do that is we need to pivot from that to understand what the potential impacts are in the future. So because East West Rail is forecast to open up in 2034, we take our 2023 base year model and forecast into the future, into 2034. And what forecasting is taking into consideration all the certain to near certain economic growth and housing allocations that are in the local plan, and including those in the model. So we then understand what the likely transport issues and congestion is on the network. The way that we've gone around obtaining that information is by engaging with the local authorities, speaking to the planning departments there, and getting their feedback within that. So we get to 2034, and then we also then forecast 15 years into the future, which is 2049, which we assume that East West Rail will be at full capacity. So when we start to develop mitigation measures for potential issues on the highway network, we are forecasting for a fully built out East West Rail. So we're sort of almost in effect future-proofing any issue within the highway network. So what we have is we have that series of models without an East West Rail intervention, and we've got those developed now, and they were developed just before Christmas. And what we're currently doing now is overlaying the East West Rail scheme as it is within that, so we start to understand what the potential impacts are of East West Rail and the potential hotspots on the network. And we have previously done that in a sort of a series of older models that we've gone out to local authority engaged with and started to share where the potential issues are on the highway networks. We started to allocate where the junctions are, what we think are going to be over capacity, and what links are. And so come the middle of January, we'll have this with East West Rail scenario. And then from there, we'll be able to start to develop mitigation measures with the Highways Authority and National Highways where appropriate to understand how we can mitigate the impacts of East West Rail. It's it's worth mentioning here, when we talk about the mitigation of East West Rail, it's about returning the highway network back to the level of performance it was without East West Rail. So when people think about their journeys now in 2023, 2024, they know how busy the network is now. But it's important to understand that by 2034, the network is going to be busier. And so with East West, so some junctions may be at the brink of failing or over capacity. They may be at 95% capacity. And with an East West Rail, we might come along and we might add 2% additional traffic to that junction, for example, and it goes to 97. Our mitigation will be returning it to the level that would have existed without East West Rail. Even though that's not maybe an optimum solution, but that's the reason why we're speaking to local authorities to make sure that when we go away to deliver these design plans, that there's an integrated approach. They may have designs for enhanced capacity on the network as it is, and it's making sure that we align and create a suitable solution for that. So once we have all of that mitigation measures in place, that's when we can start thinking about traffic management plans, in effect, about how we're going to manage the demand in 2034 and in 2049. And it's also worth mentioning, and I know there's a lot of concern around construction logistics. We do have a separate model specifically for that. So we have forecast that at the moment, and it's just it's a 2032 peak construction. So we've again forecast how much traffic's going to be on the network in 2032, and we're starting to overlay the construction and logistics plan on top of that. We don't have the detail behind that at the moment. It's still it's developing, and I think the idea is that we're going to have those construction logistics routings this month. And for those that want to know the detail behind the construction logistics routings, what we've done with initially, and this is where we'd be welcoming feedback if you've got any high level, don't use this road, don't use those routes. We've in effect done a desktop study that has underlooked at the characteristics around roads and junctions, around are they suitable for potentially for HGVs, are there active travel on there, are there bus lanes, and we've started to avoid those now. So we're starting to plot those routes now to try and to minimise the impact on local communities and journeys. And within that, we're also exploring about how to remove those HGVs and construction logistic traffic out of the traditional commuter peaks, so the AM and PM peaks. So we know the roads are busy. We appreciate that, and it was making sure that we don't add to that impact. So that, in effect, that's where we are at the moment. You may have seen at the non-statutory consultation, we provided a transport update report. that's clearly set out the work that we've done to date, highlighted some of the potential areas on the highway network that are going to go over capacity because of east-west rail. And that's in effect our sort of starter for 10 to say to everyone in the local, do you agree with this? Have we missed anything? What are the comments? What are your key concerns? What do you think we need to be considering? Because that will be the point where we then take that very strategic model and start to create more, we call them local junction models, that start to really focus on, I suppose, the granularity of the area to understand how we're going to make junctions better. What do we need to do? So in terms of traffic management, that's where we are. We've released as much information we can within the transport update report. The intention, well, it's not the intention. What we will be doing for statutory consultation is releasing our draft transport assessment. And the reason why we call it draft is because it will come as final after statutory consultation, when we take into consideration all the feedback, and design might change. But the draft transport assessment will be, I'm going to say, 90 to 95% sort of coverage, because we would have engaged with the local authorities and highways network to understand what their key concerns are and have addressed that before we get to statutory consultation. Because the last thing that I want to happen is that we get objections because of impacts on the highway network before statutory consultation, because we should be able to deal with that way beyond that. And then after statutory consultation, we take together in all your additional feedback, and then we create our final transport assessment that then in effect supports the DCO submission. So that is a sort of a whistle-stop tour of where we are, what the information's out there. Are there any additional, well, there seems like this too. So I'll let Mark go first, and then I'll follow up with Peter, because Mark had his hand up first. Mark?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm from Brickhill Parish Council. Now, one of our concerns has been about maintaining the public rights of way network across from Brickhill out to the wider rural areas. And obviously, so I've looked with interest at what's been proposed in the documentation. I suppose I would hope that, given that this is such a significant project, and it's a bit of a once in a lifetime thing, that steps can be taken to actually try and improve things rather than just simply try and maintain things. So, for instance, one of our concerns is we have a lack of bridleways going out towards the rural areas from Brickhill. I note that you've closing one footpath within Clapham, suggesting diverting via two other footpaths. Footpath Carriage Drive, Clapham 24. We have suggested previously should be a bridleway. We've got two other bridleways, one in Clapham, one in Brickhill, that are within 400 metres of each other and don't connect. And they would be, they join at around the, you've got this proposed bridge where Clapham footpaths 5 and 6 join. And essentially, as I say, there's one on the Brickhill side, one bridleway on the Brickhill side, one on the Clapham side, 400 metres apart, but not connecting. And so, we've got some historic weird things within the public rights of way network. It'd be amazingly good to try and improve on what we've got, to try and give the public something, a benefit from what is happening here. And I'm fundamentally interested in what's the approach that you're taking to try and, is it to simply maintain, or is it to try and improve? Thank you.
Thanks. I've just shared on screen, I think the area you're referring to, where we do have a number of footpaths and bridleways. I think step one has been to make sure that we maintain public rights of way as they are, so the requirements they have at the moment, and but also to make sure they're designed to any modern standards, modern requirements. I think as we move forward in the design, we would consider improvements, especially if they're sort of the quick win type ones, and we can deliver simply. I think the challenges we might sometimes get on public rights of way is if we needed to take additional land to add new public rights of way, that can sometimes be a challenge. And also we seem to have a sort of circular challenge that quite often we'll get requests for instance of improving a public right of way so that it's suitable for horses and becomes a bridleway, and then a challenge back, I think, sometimes from cyclists and walkers, that they would prefer a path that wasn't but shared with horses. So we need to consider that. But I think it's very important if you put something very specific in your consultation response, and then we will we will look at that and look how that links to the wider network. Because yeah, it's definitely something that we would consider. I mean, Ben, I see you nodding to that. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
So I'm just going to echo everything Robert said. So now's the time to really feed into that, into the design process. And one thing I'm actually really passionate about is that we talk about East West Rail here and the length of it, and everyone focuses on the train and the passengers. And if we're being brutally honest here, is that there's going to be a lot more people affected by East West Rail than are going to use it. And so the way that I see East West Rail is that it's transport for the user. And when I say that, I mean that it's users of the transport network in and around the railway line. So what you're pointing out there about public rights of ways and horse rights, we need to maintain that. We need, and if we can easily deliver benefits, they should absolutely be included here. And that's what I'm passionate about. If we can have a legacy about when East West Rail is delivered, that we've improved and enhanced people's lives that don't use the train, a bonus. And to me, that's something we should be focusing on, and something that East West Rail should really be driving. And we should be proud to sort of an aspiration for us to deliver. So any feedback like that across anything about public rights way. And so we've had, just as an example, sorry to go on about this, is that I was talking to someone about public right of way, and someone said, because we undertake surveys of the public right of way to understand how busy they were, and someone said, hopefully you're doing it on Sunday morning. And I was like, we don't traditionally do it on Sunday morning in the middle of sort of winter. And he said, because the running club use it and 250 people run across there on Sunday morning. And I was like, okay, wow, like we need to thank you for that, and we'll make sure it's kept open, and when they're running and when they're training, there is alternatives, and we maintain that because it's a key thing for a lot of people and it's incredibly important. So any information like that you can feedback will be really greatly received. Peter.
Thank you. Well, that was interesting, and it plays very nicely into the points I'm going to make. First of all, for Ben, we understand that the engineering hub, the logistics hub that's going to be connected to the East Coast Main Line, that will only really come into play when you're ready to lay track on a prepared track bed, and won't be substantially involved in the cut and fill exercise, which ends up with a prepared track bed. So we now switch back down to, in fact, if you can put that map up, please, which showed the ascent in, from up the Clapham escarpment.
Sorry, the plan we just showed.
The one that was up there when you were talking about.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
yeah.
So,
I'll just find that though I went the wrong way on the plans, and this is so these plans can be quite delicate. They're quite big. Yeah, I'm there now. Hopefully you're.
Yep. Yeah. Great. Right. That shows the well, the area that we need to bottom out really, which was the method of access and egress from the Clapham floodplain for building the viaduct. But that also joins into the issues of constructing the major cutting which ascends up the Clapham escarpment. Bearing in mind that you don't have any assistance from rail transportation for moving stuff, everything's got to be dug and moved by wheeled or tracked plant, probably running on diesel. It's quite a carbon burden for actually producing this. And it's a question of where you put the amount of stuff that you've cut whilst you're proceeding onwards until you can get it taken away if you can't use it elsewhere, or some assistance from the developing rail line. It seems that there's also, which hasn't been mentioned, the expressed intention just recently announced that East West Rail is endeavouring to satisfy a minimum freight gradient of, or a maximum gradient of 1 in 100 rather than a 1 in 80, to which all of these maps have been produced. What we're looking at the moment will change because the footprint of the cutting will change. It will widen because it's going to be a deeper cutting to slacken the gradient up along its length. And we're now really, I think, at a case of reviewing how you're planning to build that is the best way. because it produces a lot of soil. You can't use all of it. It'll provide a very wide open cutting which severs rights of way. It's going to be disruptive to, quite destructive to the natural view in the area, and it would be sensible now to consider going to a cut and cover process to get up that hill, because that will, although there'll be a disturbance building it, you won't need to destroy so much landscape in a lateral sense on either side of the centre line before you cover up what you've done. I would also tackle what is a potential issue for you in the design, and that's how you get rid of the surface water that this cutting is going to attract. It's effectively a massive land drain, 1.6 kilometres in length, which ends just short of Clapham Road, and on the other side is the river. I did some calculations on the footprint of this cutting, how it's going to be extended. And by then relating that square meterage to a sample 1-inch fall or 25 millimetre fall of rain, that would produce 400 tonnes of water in a heavy rain shower, which will go straight down to the bottom, and you'll have an issue then of what to do with it. And if with developing climate you get more than an inch of rain in a downpour or in an afternoon, that's going to be a real problem. The ground is clay. It won't absorb it because there's very little vegetation once you've scalped it. Yes, that's a point I would like to make. I would like to see you'll get your comments on going to a cut and cover procedure. And it certainly, I think, is a suggestion which we'll be putting into our responses to this consultation. The going slightly to the left to the Clapham floodplain. Yes, I take the point of all these surveys and models that Ben outlined in his piece, but at no point has anybody really gripped the issue of where, by what route they're going to get from the national highway system or the rail system onto the floodplain to create this viaduct. You say that quite a few details are being fed into the plan, but some of those details have got to be where the access and egress point is to get onto the floodplain. And no one so far has been able to give us a convincing answer to that. So, can we make any progress in that direction, please, during this session? Over to you,
Rob. Did you want to kick off on some of the construction stuff?
Yes, I can do. I mean, I think the caveat at the front of this is, which we've made a number of times, is that the statutory consultation next year will be the point where we're specifying construction traffic routes in and out there. So this point we are aiming to show a feasible railway design with construction sites which provide us sufficient land to build the railway, and some of that, Peter, would be for temporary storage from excavating cuttings before that's moved at that point. And we'll be looking to use, so on the overall, we'll be looking to use on-site haul roads where we can, and we're committed that we'll only use suitable roads to access the construction. So from this area to the point we're looking at, much of that would be Clapham Road, I'd suggest for this section. But that's that aspects of things that our construction and environmental teams are working through. at present. The point of the cut and cover tunnel, there's, from my view, there's generally two ways you construct a cut and cover tunnel. One of that's by building a very large cut-in and then effectively putting a box in that cut-in and filling around the sides. So you'd still end up with well, actually probably a larger cut-in in the temporary case than is shown here, unless you're going to deepen the side somehow. Or you're constructing, you're effectively constructing the walls from the surface. So I think it would be still a significant amount of construction along the route to construct that cut and cover tunnel. And if you're taking that up the hill and presumably sort of down to the east as well, you're looking at a maybe 3.5 kilometre tunnel in that cut and cover tunnel in that area. So that's not something we've considered would be something that would be pursuing. Obviously, if that's the key point for your feedback, we'll get views on that. But to date, we've very much been aiming to mitigate the design that's constructed in cut-ins from the surface in that route. I mean the Bedford Viaduct section is covered by the Bedford team, so they would be the ones who would provide you more detail than myself on the construction side of it. Unless Ben's got any comment on the traffic and transport side, but I don't think I'm not sure that was kind of moved into your world yet, has it, in terms of constructions? That would, I mean, we can take away that point in that action, but I assume this was probably raised on the Bedford call in something that you'd get Morel Sadair would have the kind of detail there.
Actually, Rob, there's the point I made much earlier at the Bedford section equivalent desk workshop. There was insufficient time to give much attention to the type of the viaduct, the sort of construction, and how it was going to be built, whether it was going to be built on site or whether large sections were going to be driven in on enormous transporters, and how cranes would move around on the floodplain. You appreciate that I don't think your design really has addressed those at this stage, but you must be not far away from being able to input into your transportation models the method by which you're going to get the kit and equipment onto the floodplain. And at the moment, there's no.
I think just in the interest of keeping this sort of non-Bedford too far related, we will be coming back out to you all, and we can certainly have those more in-depth conversations around how it's constructed and what the impact is, because I think that could be a session completely on its own, because there's quite a lot of considerations to take away there, and we do want your local knowledge on how to mitigate the impact for people around there. I think if you've got if there was a question that wasn't answered from Friday's session, I suggest that you drop me an email and I'll try and get that answered. Likewise, Colleen, I know that you're on the call and I think you run out of time Friday. So I suggest we do that. But certainly we'll look to run a session on construction in all the areas probably quite soon, I'd imagine, or over the next few months at least.
We probably also should say that what's fed into the traffic modelling environmental statement isn't necessarily the what's predicted to be the final construction. It's often taking a kind of conservative view. So, for instance, we need to make sure that the traffic model and the environmental model have the reasonable sort of worst case construction methods in there quite often. So the choice is kind of left with the contractor, but the contractor will be trying to do the most efficient way, but we want to make sure that we are not kind of tying their hands too closely to stop any innovation coming in at a kind of later point. So, for instance, quite often you'd assume that an underground wall, a shaft wall is diaphragm walling, because that's the kind of that's the most onerous option in terms of environmental terms. But you may end up doing a simpler sort of secant piling type approach instead. So, you know, as the construction develops, I'm sure it's very much making sure there is reasonable options for that construction, rather than at this point saying this is definitely how we will be constructing that. I'm talking in a general sense, though. I'm not close enough to the viaduct construction details to speak swiftly on that one.
Sorry,
how
Peter. Sorry, do you mind if I just pause you 1 second, because I think John's been waiting quite a while. Can we close that off for now? Is that okay? Because I'm just aware this is a huge area, and it will continue to be a massive area, and I think it needs its own sort of dedicated sessions for that. And we've got quite a lot to get through. So I'm just going to go to, is it John? You next?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I was slightly ironically probably following up what Peter said. So my ward of Bedford Borough Council is Clapham and Oakley, so this cutting will plough right through it. And I went to your consultation in Bedford, and everyone's feeling really pleased. We're going to lower the heights of the viaduct, which is great, but it means likely this cutting is going to get deeper and have a bigger impact on the environment around Clapham over the longer term. So as Peter suggested about, looking at a cut and cover tunnel, it would be, I think, something which should be looked at. And there is the difficulty, as been pointed out, is kind of, there's that little bit from Fairhill which runs into Clapham, which sits in Bedford, in the sort of the Bedford town part, but is intrinsically linked to sort of Clapham and our area. So, just to really, follow up on what Peter has said, that, we need to be thinking about this, and actually it will make it easier for connecting those public rights away afterwards. It's going to cause disruption when you build it, but actually in the longer term, helping to try and restore the environment back to some level as it was before, it would be useful. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I think we'll take that away. We've got the team taking that active feedback away, so we'll come back to that, I'm sure. Eric, you were next.
Yeah, hi there. I mean, I'll keep it very brief, but I would welcome a specific discussion with both teams covering this area, because it's split down the middle. And to be honest, in the consultation, you haven't got much more than a couple of paragraphs in here. Just to emphasise, Clapham flooded 3 times the high street last year. So water is a huge issue there. And I just point out that you're prepared. You do talk about mitigating environmental impacts. So you're putting a tunnel under Chapel Hill. You're putting tunnels under Bourne Airfield because there's going to be development there and they don't want to see it. And Highfields Caldicot. But here is just this is an important area to Clapham, whatever it is. So I really emphasise the comments before that that needs to be reconsidered. A very, very quick question to Ben, really, about the traffic there. If there is a need, because at peak times it is very busy, Bedford, and if you're putting a big multi-storey car park, and it's relevant to this because it's how do people in the Clapham in this area get into town, and you could apply it to Sainsbury's roundabout, etc. But if people have got to get there, and on existing roads, which you can't really enhance because they are got houses on the other side, etc. There's 2 things. Who's going to pay for any of those works? Are you going to pay to mitigate the impacts yourselves? And secondly, how are you going to do it? Because there is a limiting capacity.
Yep. Okay. So in terms of who pays and who deals with the mitigation, delivers it. So East West Rail will be looking at the areas where the mitigation needs to be delivered. We'll work with the Highways Authority to deliver a suitable mitigation that everyone's happy with in terms of that it's sort of pragmatic and proportionate. Who delivers it? I think that will be something that'll be worked out later on, as in effect, do we East West Rail hand over the money for a delivery partner that is chosen by the Highways Authority to undertake that work, possibly, or do East West Rail do it separately? I think that's a fair way down the line. But in terms of, I suppose, managing
demand,
are you
going to pay for it though? That's the question.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Okay,
if it's an East West, but this goes back to the point where it's the impact of East-West Rail, that I suppose the city centre, as busy as it is, getting to and from the station is incredibly busy now. It's only going to get busier by 2034, and that's without East-West Rail.
Exactly.
So East-West Rail will be only mitigating the impacts of East-West Rail, because in effect, how the increase in demand due to economic growth without East-West Rail is being managed is another discussion completely. That's to do with how you to do with strategy around parking and access and mobility and active travel. So I suppose it's just bearing in mind that when we talk about mitigation, it's the mitigation that's how big it is in 2034. How East-West Rail are looking at managing demand. So the way that East-West Rail have something that we call the station access choice model, which in effect forecast how many passengers are going to exit and entry the station over the course of the day, and at that we have mode splits, and that's saying how many people we think are going to sort of get to the station by walking, active travel, bus, and car in effect. And what we're doing, we're looking at how much, I suppose fundamentally, how much space there is for car parking. And is our demand higher than how many people can get to car parking? If yes, we are going to have to look at, and it isn't we are going to have to, we are looking at ways of mode shift, how to make walking and cycling and buses more attractive to people, making sure that they are going to be serving the areas where there is development, where there is access, sort of access issues that stop people from walking and cycling. How that delivered, there is a question mark, because again, it can't just be East-West Rail saying it. There needs to be a joined up approach with the local authorities to understand where the key constraints are and how we can work together to actually provide a solution to get people out of their cars. Because it's easy to say, oh, we're going to have a modal shift of 10%. Realistically, that is a incredibly optimistic sort of number. To get someone out of a car takes incredible policy change. People don't like giving up their cars unless it costs more money to get in their car and park than it does to get on a bus. Then you have things like safety and accessibility and comfort, all those sorts of things. There's a lot of work to be done there, but the idea is that we will not be focusing on car. We'll be encouraging other modes of transport to get to the station to take the pressure off the network.
I hear what you're saying, but I think realistically, people from this side of town, it's going to be so difficult getting to town, they're going to go to Hardwick, Kempston as a parkway station because it'd be easier to get to. Anyway, that's just a parting comment.
But that's fine, and hopefully, and the idea of our station choice model is that it forecasts that. So the model will say it's congested, and so that a congestion has a value of time to it. If you're stuck in a traffic jam or congestion, there is a disproportionate benefit to disbenefit. So people may look to travel further because it's quicker to do so and cost them less money. And so the model is sensitive to those changes.
Can I just come in on, I think, the initial point on the cut and cover tunnel? So there's a couple of things here. I mean, my background is as a tunneling engineer, and I think quite often tunnels are seen as a sort of an easy answer, but they are significant construction, especially sort of cut and cover construction. And the tunnel is the means of last resort, basically, when you don't have another solution in the area. The two references that were given, the only two tunnels on the scheme, are the Bourne Airfield and the A428. So we've got a major dual carriageway road we need to cross there, major development, and a sort of busy village. So we effectively had the choice of either going over the top of all that in quite a high viaduct as we previously were, which led to us being very high through the whole area, which was incredibly sort of unpopular in terms of visual impacts, etc. So we were either always going to be a viaduct or a tunnel there, and we've sort of got the cut and cover tunnel in that system. And the Chapel Hill tunnel, our alignment's 35 meters below the surface of Chapel Hill, so we've got a 700-meter tunnel there. In this area, we've got the 13-meter cutting over 3 kilometers more, so it's a very long tunnel for that cutting and a significant amount of construction involved. So I don't think it's an easy comparison to make.
Thanks, Rob. Brent, you've been waiting a while there.
Thank you very much. Brent from Wilden Parish Council. I think Wilden's probably the worst village affected by quite a long way along the route. We've got very high viaducts and deep, wide cuttings alongside people's houses and gardens. So we would be asking for cut and cover, we'd be asking for continuous welded rail and track bed damping to mitigate the effect of it going right past people's houses and gardens. So that's my first question. My second one is, can you still justify the need for the passing loops at Colston? Can they not be done away with completely? That would save you some money and save us a lot of aggravation. My third question is, what about the damage to Wilden's very small roads and lanes? We're all roads and lanes here with no big roads. It partly segues into what you were saying earlier about returning to as they were. Will East West Rail pay to return the roads to as they were before this construction? Or will you be looking to Bedford Borough, who certainly won't have the cash for it? My next question is, Wilden's already got a lot of problems with flooding on the high street from Soakaway from the hill, and looking at the huge constructions that are going to go on, this is going to be made even worse, and it doesn't seem that the balancing or settling ponds, whatever you want to call them, are in the right place. My final point, it's not just for Wilden but in general, the public rights of way. At the presentation in Wilden Village Hall, your engineers were telling my parishioners that no public footpaths will be closed. And yet I've only got to look at Wilden footpath 16, for instance, which clearly says on your plans to be closed. So what's the truth in that? Will they be closed, or is it, as your engineer told everybody, no public footpaths will be closed? Thank you.
Okay, I've got a very poor short-term memory, but I'll try and cover all those points. Let me know if I miss any. Okay, so construction in Wilden, we have moved the construction slightly further north from there, from Wilden itself. We tried to use sensible diversions for the existing roads and footpaths in the area. Where we are using roads, we will be responsible for maintaining those to an appropriate level. So if the implication is that the construction vehicles effectively destroy the road structure, we would need to make sure that road structure is maintained. We'd also need to make sure that any roads we were using were sort of suitable for that traffic in the first place. So that would be a cost on us to improve those roads. Drainage, there's a full drainage design on the project which takes into account future flooding levels, including climate change, and picks up runoff in channels along the cuttings and embankments. I don't think that for detail they're not really shown on here, but that often takes those to the balancing ponds, as well as they're used for highways. So we're installing new highways, like you can see on the plan now. Colston Road, we've got a drainage pond which will take some of the drainage from that, and I think from the railway system as well of that pond. So there's quite a complex drainage design which supports this. I think there's something in the nuancing on footpaths being closed. So Ben, jump in on this. So there's a number of public rights of way where we are needing to divert them or combine footpaths. So technically we would be closing a section of the footpath and we will be combining footpaths. What we've aimed to do is maintain a public right of way which goes from A to B, even if it needs to go via C rather than the direct route, and combine to other footpaths. So I think that was the point made. I mean, there was a number of engineers at the Wilden event. I was at the Wilden event myself and spoke to a lot of people. So I think we were trying to explain the plans there. I'm sure I've missed a point or two. Is there anything, Brent, I've missed on that?
Yeah, there's the. Can you still justify the need for the passing loops at Coles?
Yep. Sorry, I'm not quite sure why that would have changed. So our understanding is that this section of route is still expected to run 2 freight trains per direction per day on there to allow freight trains to to pull over and faster passenger trains to go through. We need passing loops along the network. We've only got one passing loop at Colston in this whole section. I think our next one is around the Camborne area, so they're not that common. I mean, in this area, we've put the passing loop on a flat area alongside the track, so we have a slightly wider track area and a slightly wider bridge crossing over it, but that passing loop in itself isn't making large changes to the design in that area. And I've met the landowners of the land where the passing loop is as well. We've gone through the design. So yes, I think we still have the passing loops there. If we do further operation and modelling, which shows the loop is not required, we won't install a loop which isn't required. The project don't want to construct things that aren't needed. But yeah, we still feel that is required.
Okay, thanks for answering all that. One last point: all of the purple utility and construction areas that are marked on the map. What's going to happen to that land afterwards? Will that be all returned to agriculture or whatever?
Yes. So unless there's environmental mitigation underneath that, which is shown on the right-hand side, if it is just purple land, that would be returned to the reasonable satisfaction of the owners. You can tell I've said that line quite a lot recently. So yes, so effectively, if that is arable farming land, we remove the topsoil, store the topsoil, return the topsoil, return that back to the sort of reasonable quality, and then they are compensated for associated crop loss, because obviously it takes a few years for that land to become as fertile as it was beforehand. So there is a very set procedure with that we've been through with landowners.
I think the biggest worry for a lot of people is that those purple areas will be utilised for extra housing. Is that definitely not on?
It's not something we can do. So under the guidance, the guidance is very strict in things like don't consent orders and CPO guide requirements and things where they need to be returned. And to be honest, the majority of land on these types of projects is actually taken through agreement with the landowners. So no, there's no ability for us to take that piece of land and then build housing or to hand it to anybody else. The requirement is to return it to the landowner if the landowner wants that land back.
Okay, so the only point that I've not really had any satisfaction on, as I say, Wilden's the worst affected village with the huge viaducts and the massive cuttings running right along people's houses and gardens. Would we get cut and cover through Wilden or continuous welded rail?
So the rail itself, I mean, when we're constructing the track, we'll be using very modern technology to lay that rail. So I mean, I'm not a track engineer, but my understanding is that we'll be laying long lengths of rail in there, and we'll be particularly designing the railway to make sure it is designed in a way which is low maintenance and low noise when the trains are running across it. So I think that's going to be constructed as part of the whole scheme. We'll do noise assessments across the scheme, and if there's areas where we are breaching noise limits because of the sound from the rail, that's something that we would look to see whether there's sort of damping systems, etc., that could be used at that point. I mean, I think it goes back to the point I made about the cut and cover tunnel before. So looking at Wilden, there's large areas that are on your embankment and then viaduct. So you're effectively saying, can we have a cut and cover tunnel through Chapel Hill? I don't think that would significantly alter the amount of construction in there, maybe more, because we'll be bringing in a lot of concrete into there. So you know, at the moment we're excavating soil, removing the soil. For the cut and cover tunnel, we're still going to have to remove quite a lot of soil, and we'll be building a large concrete box in that area. So that cut and cover tunnel would be a significant amount of construction by Wilden, for a significant additional cost compared to the benefits that it will bring. So I think we'd struggle to make a case for the additional investment for a cut and cover in tunnel in that area.
And yet we are, you know, probably, as I say, definitely the worst affected village. But
do you want to visit some of the? I've been told that by about 4 villages so far. So
well, I think
you know, the villages near Cambridge are saying say a sort of similar thing. But I mean, this is, to be fair, this is almost a point where it goes above, you know, where we sit on the project and becomes a question for DFT of, are you prepared to spend extra tens or, you know, maybe it's the £100 million cost for the benefit versus the cost there. But I'm not quite sure that all your problems would be solved by a cut and cover tunnel through Wilden.
I think my parishioners would be happy. Okay, can I just sign off on this last point then, because I'm aware I'm hogging quite a lot of time here, and I'll finish off then. Right throughout this project, right from the start, and I've been in on it from the very first notification, we're constantly told we're back checking, and by the time it gets to the next consultation, we'll have the final facts, we'll have this, we'll have that. Just getting a flavour of what's been said tonight, it sounds as if we're going to get to the statutory consultation next year, and we're still going to be told we're still refining things. Whereas surely at the statutory consultation stage, you should have everything in its final stages and be able to say, this is the master plan, it won't change, this is what we're offering, we're not going to change it afterwards, which has happened after every consultation. Surely at the statutory consultation, it will be, this is what it is, it's black and white, comment on this.
Broadly speaking, I'd agree with that end point. So the consultations to date have been very much, this is how our design is developing, or these are route options we're looking at. Can we get your feedback so we can develop design, so we can amend the design, and so forth. The statutory consultation, for instance, we wouldn't be looking to put options on the table. Would be effectively saying, this is the design we would like to construct. There may be areas where we'd do more detail on that, but the design that we'd be showing is the one that, you know, unless something changed dramatically, that's what we'd be intending to put forward at DCO as well. And obviously, when we're at DCO, that is the design we are asking for planning approval to construct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on that point, I think it's fair to say that you're right. It's been a long time since we've been able to come to you with updated proposals. We pushed to have a non-stat consultation so we could bring optionality to you, aware that it looks like we're still thinking about things, but this is a good thing, you know, to be able to do, to come out and actually get feedback on the optionality we have at the moment. So I just wanted to make that point. Gordon?
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for taking the time to do this. Very interesting listening to Ben earlier, and I really seriously look forward to his modelling when he takes into account how the elderly and infirm in our North Bedfordshire villages are going to cycle or walk to a station. We don't have footpaths in many places. We certainly don't have cycle tracks, and some of them would have to travel 3, 4, 5 miles to a station. So his modelling is going to be very interesting. While we're on the subject of modelling, the noise mitigation modelling, which we haven't really discussed, for our Wyboston, Colston and Chawston Parish Council is very important to us, because the prevailing winds are from the southwest, so everything coming over the railway is going to hit our parish. the stretch along by Colston where the passing loops are, etc. Most of that is on an embankment, so it's elevated. We really need to have serious discussions with sound reflecting, deflecting, absorbing barriers. We don't want trees and flimsy screens. We really need something solid, if only to the north side of it, as you see it on the screen now, because then that would deflect the noise back away over open countryside, and it would enhance the view for your passengers looking out the window to the south rather than to the north. But we really need something seriously done about this all the way along that stretch and across the viaduct, either side of the viaduct going over the Black Cat Junction. So probably that needs to be another meeting. Thank you. That'll do me for a minute.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. Does any of our experts want to comment on that before we move on?
I'll just comment on I suppose the point about accessibility. So yes, there are a wide range of users that will need access to transport infrastructure, and that's I suppose a challenge that's only going to increase over time with an aging population, and we do need to deliver and consider design solutions that take into consideration all users. So if you've got and now is the time for that feedback. So if you have concerns or you think there are things that I suppose East West Rail and train operators and transport operators within the local environment need to consider now as part of not just East West Rail, but as in terms of just mobility and social mobility across all age limits, please do factor it in now. We do have working groups that have accessibility in them, and any feedback that you've got specifically locally to the problems that you feel that you're going to be facing or are facing now would be really, really greatly received. So the modelling, Evie, and I can see what you're saying, and I'm laughing because modelling is mathematically perfect. But this is the point of these consultations: it's to get the real world for you to really challenge us and say, actually, there's people here, and we have got a unique set of circumstances. No, we're not even a unique set of circumstances. A set of circumstances that may not be able to be picked up within your modelling. Can you consider them? And this is what our thoughts are. So if you could feed those back, I'd really, really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you. With our parish, we don't have a bus service at all, and if you don't have a car, you're stuffed, and you can't afford a taxi. So the only way to get anywhere is get in a car and drive. So you've got to take that into your modelling. Anyway, I'll let somebody else have a go now. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. I think Justin, you're next.
Hi, thanks. I've got a few things, and obviously Roxton facing the options of 1B or 1C, so I will try and keep this as brief as I can. Can you confirm via the minutes whether or not you are consulting the British Horse Society on the design of bridges for any bridleway footpath diversions across the line? Can I make you aware that neither of your plans for options 1B or 1C around the Black Cat have indicated the new footpaths stroke bridleways that Highways England are building? You need to make sure that your plans do incorporate those and then design solutions as they're affected by the Black Cat highway works. Can we have an answer on whether or not you have agreed with Roxton Garden Centre, or British Gardens, I think is the company that owns them, that they have accepted or are willing to close down their business if you adopt option 1B?
It's already booked to close anyway.
Can you please confirm what the route will be, the last mile route will be, for people living in Wyboston, Charleston, Colston and Roxton to the new Thamesford station? Can you please confirm what the acoustic barriers would be on options 1B and 1C? Can you confirm if the existing rail operators on the East Coast Main Line have committed to stopping and at what intervals at the new Thamesford station? Can you please confirm what the heights are of the start of the viaduct above ground on options 1B and 1C? And can you please confirm whether or not the viaducts will be constructed from steel or concrete? And can you also outline what the brief is to the designers of the viaducts? That's it.
Right. So after me pointing out with Brent's questions that my short-term memory wasn't great, we've got, I think, about 10 in a row. Okay, so I will try not to miss points here, but maybe we can take one at a time. British Soil Society, we are having discussions with the British Soil Society, and we do design with the required standards in mind there. So it would be more of a case that we would design with the standard, and then we would carry out first assessments on that and consult with them. Ben, I think we had discussed a similar discussion earlier, didn't we? The WCHR guidance includes the assessment of horse riding needs, doesn't it? So that's something we will be doing, but hasn't been done to date. But the designs to date are to that guidance. We have the A4 to 8 improvement projects model, so we have all the detail of that. So if it's not shown on the drawing, I still believe we have the paths and will have taken account of those. But I need to check that point if somebody can to make a note. I think your next point was on the design of the viaduct. I feel I may have missed a point there.
Yeah, you missed a few, but go on.
Okay, I'll get what I can, and then you can catch me at the end. Then the designs of the viaduct, they are very much work in progress at the moment. We've just taken a very standard design with piers every 20 meters along the routes there. How they are designed, even in terms of whether they're steel, concrete, etc., is something that is part of the development as we go forward. I think we'll be specifying enough about the design to be able to do a reasonably conservative environmental impact assessment and traffic and transport, and make sure we've got space for things like concrete batching if required. But that goes back to the point that we would also want the detailed designer and the contractor to be bringing their expertise and their innovation there. So we wouldn't want to be completely tying their hands of the structures they could design.
Could I ask a related question then, just for clarity? Would at DCO stage, will we know then what the viaducts are going to look like?
I'm kind of looking with you, Fiona. I think what we'd specify some areas where they had a potential visual impact, where there was a sort of key impact in terms of visual. So looking at the A1 at the moment, we've assumed sort of piers between the A1 and the slip roads, and one of the things we'll be looking at is that structure specifically. And there's a chance that if that structure becomes a wider structure and a higher structure, that would have sort of visual impact. So by DCO stage, we would have to take specific account of the visual impact of that structure. So those sorts of things, yes. But if we've got a raised route which is crossing a number of sort of public rights of way and things, we may have visualizations which will indicate a likely, maybe a slightly boring conservative view of that, but I don't think we'd specify exactly how that would look like at that point. So Fiona, do you want to come in and either add or correct me on that one?
I think we'd need to have some form of assumption in terms of the materials to inform our carbon assessments, whether that's steel or concrete. What sort of materials are we using? We'd have to make some assumptions. We obviously don't want to restrict what the main contractors do, but we'd have to have some form of assessment and the assumption around the materials that we use to construct the viaduct at TCO stage, I would have thought.
Okay.
Okay. Where were we now? So remind me of your next point.
Right. One that you missed over was Roxton Garden Centre as a business.
So we have spoken to the business owners of Roxton Garden Centre, but I think you'll understand if I can't explain how that conversation went on, to LRG. But it obviously it's their business, it's their discussions.
Okay.
The land and property teams I've met with the land and property team with them to explain the options, and I'm obviously not at liberty to say what they've said in response.
Okay. So last mile access for the two sort of villages to the new Thamesford station.
So Thames Station, either option assumes we have a western access off Barford Road. We will be doing transport modelling assessments of vehicle journeys in operation off Barford Road and the need, and that will assess the need of whether we need to amend the junctions, any of the junctions or Barford Road itself and the junctions onto the A1, for instance, or on the routes to Black Cat.
Right. The next question was about rail operators. The existing rail operators of the East Coast Main Line. What commitments have they made to stop at the new station?
So we work with Network Rail rather than the specific rail operators and their network rail operations and modelling teams, and we've got confidence from the initial sort of work they've done and the discussions that there is sufficient space in the timetable to stop services on the East Coast Main Line slow lines, but not the fast lines. So that's why we've got platforms on the outside, slow lines.
But as we stand today, the operators have not committed to stopping. Okay.
I don't think they would at that point. I mean, the way that the network works, it's more the fact that the network, I think they'd be comfortable, but it's Network Rail who do the operational modelling, and we are talking about 2035 operation type time. So that's potentially different operators at that point.
I understand what you're saying, but from a layperson's point of view, living in this area, knowing whether or not there's a benefit to this project, because they'll be able to get a train north-south at Thamesford, it does have a bearing on their judgment. Okay.
Yeah, and our expectation
is
no. Our expectation is that it's not that I don't know. It's the fact that we wouldn't intend to go and speak to the operators, and it's the fact that we've worked with a modelling team, and we expect that. And our understanding is that the existing services would be able to would be stopping at Thamesford Station. So yes, trains will be stopping there on the East Coast Main Line, and that's the whole point, to have a strong interchange station there.
Okay. So then the last two questions, just technical ones. As things stand at the moment with your design, what's the height at the start of the viaducts of the two options, 1B and 1C, above ground? Appreciate that's an approximation, but I know that the level difference at the Thamesford station is 22 meters versus 9 meters, so it'd be useful to know.
Yeah, so that's on these planning profiles. So the grey, I'm going to show on the screen. The grey is the viaduct. So the embankment to viaduct transition here. So you've got 15.8 meters. At that point.
Okay, that's great. And then last but not least, acoustic barriers. What assumptions are made of acoustic barriers to 1B and 1C?
I don't believe we've assumed that acoustic barriers. Well, I mean, we'll do noise modelling and do the assessments, looking at close by receptors there. For the whole route, we've for the core route, we haven't been assuming that noise barriers would be required for that route. I think the only places that we've shown noise barriers are where we're sort of very, very, very close. I think there's a couple shown in the Cambridge areas. We entered Cambridge where we're very close to existing housing there, but we haven't assumed that at this stage that we would be installing barriers, or we haven't shown them on the plans. But it's something that when the assessment is carried out, they would be then introduced. So we go from a point of only introducing them when we've got confidence they would be needed. So I think it'd be quite misleading to show them now then withdraw them. Fiona, I'm not sure if you're closer to this work at all.
Yeah, I think you're right. Our modelling and assessment work is still ongoing, so we still need to determine where those locations would be. Still undertaking baseline surveys to understand what the existing conditions are, and then we need to predict as part of our modelling work what those will likely be when our scheme is in place. In the first instance, we would look at embedded mitigation, so where we do have deep cuttings, that would act as a form of noise attenuation, and then if needed, we would look at noise barriers that could be reflective or absorptive. So we haven't decided on what that would look like yet until we've completed our assessment work.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got one question which is relevant for the whole of the borough, and it's relative to the proposed multi-storey car parks on the existing car park of Bedford Hospital South Wing. At what point will East West Rail tell the public what access is going to be like to that hospital during the construction of the new multi-storey car park?
So that'll affect you being construction phasing plans, won't it? Yeah, appreciate this isn't my area, but Ben, I'm not sure if you got that knowledge of when we'd show construction phasing. Is that something? I mean, there'd be something in that space at StatCon, wouldn't there? But I don't know if we show that phasing would all be at StatCon or whether someone's DCO.
It would be we would be looking to that at statutory consultation. That's as much as I can say. This all falls upon the difference between, I suppose, the strategic model and the local models that we're doing. And what you're talking about the construction, about the phasing and the impacts of it sort of locally. That's very much a local. We need to do some local modelling to understand what that phasing does, and that will be a statutory consultation. We'll have to show that. I suppose the step from the story of how things change over time.
Yeah, so with respect, although it's physically a local matter, and I understand your terminology as a transport engineer, there are people who live across the whole of the borough that use that hospital on a regular basis, and it's a big worry that I'm hearing from my parishioners. How am I going to get to the hospital when I need it? So it's a borough-wide worry as a result of this proposed development, that it needs to be answered and needs to be understood. If you're asking people to comment and support a proposed development, you need to give people some facts. And obviously, I appreciate you don't have those facts today, but you need them at DCO. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. On the hospital car parks, just to add that we've obviously made a commitment that we will ensure that people are able to access car parking and it doesn't impact patient care and such. So there's a lot of ongoing conversations with the council and the hospital and East West Rail, and they're still ongoing. But certainly by StatCon, we will have more on that, if not sooner, but certainly at StatCon. There's been a statement released to that effect as well. So, Nicola.
Hello, everyone. So, not too technical. Could you please go back to the previous apps?
We can't hear you very well. Can you turn your sound up? Or...
Yeah, sorry.
So
that was better. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can we go to Wealdon High Street, please? Brilliant. No, the first one before that one.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. Yep. Got you. Wealdon.
Now, I'm just puzzled. It appears to be a finger of land that is on a public footpath between two. That's the one. What is that, please?
That that is where we are constructing the bridge over the railway, and then we've got basically slopes down from the bridge to connect into that footpath. So this bit.
Yeah.
So that's in the fields on the footpath. So that's just that's tying ourselves in back to the footpath. So the existing footpath's the dashed lines here, and we pick it up at this point, and then raise the level slightly to to go up to cross over the cutting in this area.
Okay, that's fine. That's cleared it up actually. I was sort of slightly puzzled. I've been puzzled for a few weeks when I saw it. Can you let us know, is there any more properties that are to be demolished aside from the poets in this area, please?
So in these sections, sorry, when you say in this area,
Sorry, in these sections that we're looking at.
So in section 4 and 5, we've not stated that any project properties need to be demolished. We've got some where we've got potential direct impacts, or where we're very close to the properties in the next section after we go through Tempsford and alongside St Neots, and so we've spoke to the landowners there. But in the sections, the only ones, which is route section 6, where we've said we would need to demolish a property, is Two Pots Farm, where we are clashing directly with them, with where we're going to tunnel underneath the A428. We spoke about the garden centre, so on option 1B, we clash directly with the property with a construction site there, so we would more like, for intents and purposes, we would need to demolish that property. And then we have just on this section past St Neots, there's ones where we go very close to some existing properties, and we've been speaking to in this area it's quite kind of complex where we go near the property, especially with the logistics hub for this option. So we go close to the properties, and we're speaking to them about how we can maintain, how can we avoid clashing with the property, maintaining access to the property, and i.e. the road access from and their actual individual access. But we don't necessarily need to demolish the property to construct the scheme, we don't believe.
Okay, thank you.
Peter?
You're on mute, Peter.
Yes, so just change that. Along the way, East West Rail has said that one of the social benefits that's going to result out of this is that you're going to consider adjacent cycleways running along the track alignment. To what extent is this being maintained, please? Are there any sections where you're going to have a co-located pathway?
I feel in that there's a few sentences may have been joined. So Mike's, I've been on the project for 3 years, and the request for adjacent cycleways to the railway has come up from a number of times from stakeholders, from councils and other groups. And I think what we've said in response is that we are looking at active travel and cycleways across the route, and we would consider cycleways that are alongside the railway, but that's, for many places, that's not necessarily the best way for people to get from A to B. So there's a number of in a lot of places you wouldn't necessarily want to follow the route of the railway. There's existing cycleways, or nicer cycleways, or more direct routes from A to B. So Ben, add chip in if you want to this. But the point at the moment we have with
right.
With this section, we've got cycling facilities at the stations, and we'll continue to talk to councils about how we can bring active travel routes into those stations. For instance, we've got an active travel bridge connecting Cambourne directly to North Cambourne, but that's about the only one we've specified in the design at the moment. And Peter, are you heading somewhere in this question?
Yeah, no, I understand that. So it's something that you still would consider where there's a sensible advantage in achieving it, and it's probably going to be in the close vicinity of existing stations.
Yeah, so it goes on to the point I think earlier about the if there's sort of quick wins for betterment, if there's a gap between existing cycleways that are around the scheme, they're the sort of things we would consider. But we wouldn't do what they've done in sort of Cambridge guided busway, where we've brought cycleways along the whole route, for instance.
Yeah. Okay. And to what extent will this alignment be fenced, please? Is it going to be completely fenced, or only fenced where you've got actual electrified sections?
No, I believe we'd have a requirement to fence the whole alignment. So yes, I mean safety. We need to try the best we can to keep people off the railway. So it'll all be fenced. Would
that be the very common type of vertical metal stakes?
It would be the standard. So it would be to Network Rail specifications, who have a standard sort of set of fencing. So yes, it would be. I mean, there's the standard sort of safety metal fencing. Though I do understand that in some places we would consider alternatives as long as they were safe and secure.
Do you make any provision within that? I know it's to keep people out, but to allow wildlife to transit from one side of the railway to the other.
Yeah. Do you want me to say that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So where we know there are areas of wildlife like Barbasdale bats, for example, we would look to create crossings for them. So there are structures such as viaducts where they have to be a minimum of 4.5 meters high to allow them to cross underneath the structure. Or we do have areas of woodland planting on the side of the railway alignment to allow them to go up and over their alignment as well, to reduce that severance impact. So we try and connect these bat habitats and foraging and commuting routes to make sure that they can get around.
We've got some culverts as well, haven't we, and stuff around the streams for the water mammals. I'm going to use the wrong term too.
Yes. So Bournebrook has a bat crossing as well, so that's in this area.
Okay, thank you. And there's been a couple of references to the StatCon during this presentation. Each time it's been in the StatCon next year, which is 2000.
Yeah, I don't think we've woken up from it being January rather than December here. So I think we've been saying the same line. So I think the aim is later this year, but I think you'll find that most people haven't changed their terminology for when we were having these discussions in December.
If you're not yet moved it into the first part of 2026.
I think it's fair to say that we look at it from 12 months from completion of this non-StatCon. So this wraps up at the end of January. So initially it can be up to 12 months from the end of this process.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. Brent.
Thanks, Sarah. Two very quick points. I'm aware of the time. At the Wilden Village Hall presentation, I was told that throughout the full length of the Wilden cutting, there would be full overhead electrification. Is that still the case? That's my first point. And my second point is the previous point that Nikki raised about that finger of land where you're going to put the footbridge over the top for walkers to get over there. There's a persistent rumour going around Wilden that I can't seem to damp down, that the houses where that finger of land goes down to on the high street, that there's going to be demolitions there. Can you just confirm for me that that's not the case?
Okay, I'll take the second point first. I'm not sure where that rumour's come from, because
no, me neither.
I mean, we are not we are not even taking land there. We're just picking a footpath up at the back of their garden in the fields.
Yes.
So no, I don't know where that rumour has come from. I don't know whether there's some misconfusion with previous alignments or something. I think we were quite clear in the non-statutory consultation on electrification. So our preference is for discontinuous electrification. So we're looking at various options at the moment. One of those options would be full electrification, but I think the expectation is that a discontinuous electrification is more likely, where the trains for the majority of the route run on overhead wires with the ability to use batteries on those parts of the line without the overhead wires. I think expectation for this part of the route, because it is new build railway, would be that through this section it would run on overhead wires, but that piece of work is not finished yet, so we don't have a definitive conclusion of where on the route there would be overhead wires and not. This section of route has always been designed with enough space for overhead wires.
Okay, thank you.
Brent, on your point around those properties, we'll make sure that's sort of collected in these minutes notes, and you can happily share that with those people to put their minds at ease.
Thanks, Sarah. I don't know where it started from, but every time I get asked about it, this always comes up, and I always say, no, that's not correct, but it still keeps appearing. Thank you.
You're not the only place where people find these rumours, so don't worry at all. Who's next? Nikki, sorry.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just going back to Peter's point about wildlife corridors. I understand bats fly, and you can have culverts for otters, whatever else that live in the water. What about large land species such as badgers? We have several species of deer, fox, hares. Their range is going to be cut severely by a double fence. What happens there?
So we need to complete our ecology surveys at the moment, understand where they are, understand where their range paths are, and then we need to implement suitable mitigation. We need to work closely with Natural England on our protected species licensing to make sure we're implementing the most appropriate mitigation so we don't impact them during construction and operation. So that's still ongoing exercise at the moment, but we do consider badgers.
What mitigation would that be? If they've got a fence, they can't climb over it or come through it, can they?
No, we'd have to provide we'd have to either relocate the set itself or provide them with suitable access to it. But it's mostly, if it's cut off, it's most likely we'll have to relocate the set itself.
And what about things like deer and everything?
I have heard about muntjacs being seen in the area.
Yeah, no, they're not just seen. They're really, really widespread. We have muntjac, we have Chinese water deer, but most importantly, we've got quite a healthy population of roe deer, which is a few years ago, it's quite unusual to see them in this part, and they're gradually spreading. So, and they're a very large deer compared to muntjac.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think they're quite notoriously hard to survey because they do roam quite in far areas. But
they do, yeah.
Yes. If you do have any information about where they are at the moment, that's very useful. It'll be a similar concept when we know that we're cutting off their access to certain areas. We would have to try and provide that or direct them to an area where they could get back to where they originally came from.
I think it's fair to say as well, isn't it, that a lot of our environmental habitat creation and things is focused around improving habitats and creating new habitats, isn't it, to sort of help spread, give the existing population of animals more options, but also increase the ecology in the area.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, about enhancement and bolstering existing habitats.
Okay, it just sounds like it's being severed, but okay. Yeah, we've got huge populations. We've got a lot of people who are really interested as well. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. Gordon.
Yes, just a quick one. Electrification was mentioned a moment ago. The electricity supply in the whole of this area is quite fragile. Are any measures being taken to boost it, upgrade it, or whatever? We're becoming more reliant on solar, but there's still not sufficient battery power to keep everything going. And there have been a couple of occasions where people have been expecting blackouts, especially in the cold weather. Are you doing anything to, with the generating authorities, to get this issue resolved? Thank you.
So our traction power takes sort of feeds from a couple of different places, but in the new section of route, we're taking a direct feed from the Little Barford power station, and we are working with electricity providers to understand the feasibility of supply. To my knowledge, I don't think there's anything we're doing to increase that apart from ensure there's sufficient supply in the network to interconnect our systems in, and it almost becomes a case that I think those providers would need to obviously look for additional capacity where required, wouldn't they? But I'm sure if it's directly required by us, we would obviously have to enhance that.
Thank you for that. Just be aware that Little Barford Power Station is gas powered, and with the aggravation coming from overseas gas fields, that could put it at risk. And it is also German owned, and if there's problems with gas supplies in Germany, they may decide to support their own country rather than support generating here. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the hands up. A couple of minutes until we attempt to wrap up, but let's see if we've got any questions in the chat that we've missed. Look like we have.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, John? John Dunford.
Can you hear you, John? Yeah.
Yeah. I did put my hand up a few times as we went through various things, but for some reason I seem to get missed.
Oh, sorry, John.
Town councillor in St Neots. Town councillor in St Neots. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the couple of points during the conversation, there seems to be a little bit of confusion about what the A418 and what the 428 is. Currently, the 418 goes to Black Cat, and the 428 starts from the A1 going towards Cambridge. Now, quite how that will change when the new bit of road from Black Cat is built, I don't know, but I suspect it might change from 418 to Black Cat and then 428 from Black Cat. But that's a small point for you to think about with your negotiations. As for electrification, discontinuous electrification, I think the East-West group really need to seriously think about that, because at the end of the day, what that means is if you've got discontinuous electrification, that's not going to benefit freight trains, because freight trains, although there are train locomotives coming along that have diesel, electric and battery power, that battery and diesel power is only for short distances, which means quite likely the East-West will be predominantly getting diesel locomotives dragging freight trains. And secondly, about freight trains, I think you mentioned 2 freight trains a day. I think you might find that that's 2 freight truck paths an hour.
No, no, the expectation is 2 freight trains per day per direction, so 4 in
2 freight
total in
trains
a
a day
day.
per direction.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
There is more on the freight. We've got lots of fact sheets on the website for lots of topics, so feel free to make sure you've
there was
seen
another
those.
question I wanted to ask. I'm sorry. You know the profile maps.
Yes.
I've had the greatest of difficulty finding them on your website.
We've just popped a link in the chat to those, John.
Thank you.
It's about halfway up from Fiona, and I also added another one, so they're there for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, we are 1 minute past 8 o'clock, So I am going to wrap this up. Obviously, this isn't the only time you can ask questions. You have our contact details. We might even see you at any of the remaining events. The notes will be summarised into a feedback sort of document, and that will be shared with you quite soon. And the link to tonight will also be shared quite soon. We've got a responsibility to get all of these in before the end of, before the 24th of Jan. So bear with us on that, but we will send those out to you very soon. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for all of the East West Rail experts also for joining us. And I look forward to hearing from or seeing you very soon.
Thank you very much. Been very informative.
Thanks,
Thank you.